started here, y'all. Making sure everyone can hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up or a yeehaw or something. Right? Well, first of all, thanks so much to everybody here coming out to Daily Talks. I am your host and moderator today. Unfortunately, Adam Hobbs was supposed to be here, but he sounds like a frog. I talked to him on the phone, and you guys didn't want to sit next to him, believe me. So now it falls to me. But I'm so excited to talk with y'all. I think this is gonna be great. I myself would love to learn more about pitching because I feel like I could be better at it. So hopefully I will learn something. Just a few quick things. Thanks to the Charlotte Film Festival. We're off to a great start with this festival. It's been so fun these last couple days. The Charlotte Film Society doing a great job. Thanks, Brad, back there. Brad Ritter, give him a hand if you don't mind. This whole thing is because Brad is a very stubborn person, and Brad, we really appreciate it. As a filmmaker, I'm so thankful for a space like this. So great job. Okay, so let me introduce you to the panel here. All right, so he's worked on national campaigns for brands such as Harley Davidson, Boar's Head, Seagate, Bridgestone Tires, and Bank of America, a 3-time National Advertising Award winner, 2-time Webby Award winner, and a 2-time Vimeo Staff Picks winner, I guess. Director and cinematographer Bernardo Marentes. All right, next, she's the director of award-winning documentary films, Code, Debugging the Gender Gap, Running for Jim. You may also recognize her from speaking on TED and TEDx, on issues like equity, financial savviness, and the gender gap in tech. Acclaimed director and speaker, Robin Hauser. And last but not least, his work has won awards at Venice Film Festival, Toronto International Film Festival, New York Shorts. He's edited and or directed commercial projects for dozens of international brands, writer, director, and editor John Burton. And unfortunately, Caleb Farmer was supposed to be here, but he also got sick. I guess he and Adam were hanging out, so, but best wishes to Caleb, hope he gets better. All right, we'll get started. Like I said, I'm anxious to learn myself a little bit more about pitching. I'd love for each of our guests here to just kind of introduce pitching as they interact with it. Like, what is y'all's definition of pitching? And whoever wants to take it away.
Before I get started, Caleb did text me this morning to make sure that I said, I only gave my frames for treatments from FrameSet. Just so you know. No, treatments and pitching I use primarily to communicate with clients on a more commercial level. And so that usually comes after we receive the request for a bid. And this is an opportunity for me to communicate my vision for it, how we're trying to capture it, what type of voiceover tone, how cinematography is going to work, all that stuff. So we use it, and I use it primarily to help sell an idea and to get buy-in from the client once we're in the pitching process or in the working project.
Cool. John?
Yeah, so my experience pitching is pretty similar, where a lot of the time it's on the commercial side of things. So either that's, I'm working with a production company and we're trying to talk to an agency or a client, trying to, win a project from them, or like I'm just, a freelance director writing on something that I've been, invited to pitch on. So it's been really rare for me that I've done the like traditional indie film pitch thing, where you're like taking meetings and then trying to pitch a feature idea and, try to pull financing together or something. That's been pretty rare. I've written proposals for grants, and that's been an interesting, different process. But yeah, for me, it's mostly commercial world.
Unlike John, I've spent the last 14 years fundraising and using pitches to try to fundraise for just independent documentaries. So to me, it's like the essential tool, and it's really the first step after coming up with the concept or the idea of the film. It's putting together a pitch deck, understanding what you're going to say in an elevator, and really sort of committing to what's on the page in terms of something that you can just send out there to a bunch of people and really stand behind.
And where do y'all start? Like I feel overwhelmed with the blank page of writing a deck or a treatment. Where does it start for you?
Well, I just say first you start, especially in the documentary world, it's going to morph and change over, say, the 3-year process, 3 years of making the film. So that's okay. That's a good, you just jump back in there to Google Slides or whatever and edit it. But I just start with what's the film about and try to write maybe a 5-line synopsis. Visuals are important. I think not making it too text heavy because a lot, anybody that I'm usually marketing this stuff to private individuals, that like high net worth individuals. I'm trying to get them to donate to my nonprofit. And so for them, they just want to see it. They don't have a whole lot of imagination. You have to show them what the film's going to be about, even if it's just what you think it's going to be about at that time. So I just start with who do I want to be in the film? List of expected experts or want to be experts or who I'm hopeful will be in the film type thing, and then just do maybe top 7 slides.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Images are kind of everything. I feel like if I'm speaking to someone, I can probably convey most of the details of what a project is, but what I really am not good at getting across is the feel like. What will this thing, what are the vibes, what will you come away with on a gut level from this, hopefully. I think for me, I used to try to make personal passion projects without creating a treatment, knowing I was just gonna self-finance the thing. And I would get to the end of the project, and some crew members would tell me yeah, I had no idea what this was gonna be until I saw the cut. So I'm okay, that's a failing on my part. There's gotta be something I can do here. So yeah, see us afterward for a 10% off discount code on Frameset.
What about you, Bernardo? Where do you start? You write a lot of decks.
I do write, yes.
How many decks a year?
I wrote a lot. Yeah, I was working on 2 today, and they're all at different levels and require different things. But for me, these pitch decks and treatments are essentially a visualization of how I see this project coming together. So they're on paper, what is in my head. So I think for me, the most important thing to start with is the idea. So it's whatever, half the time it's boards from an agency or something, they're saying, oh, here's the shot list, here's what we're trying to do. In that case, it's an interpretation of how I'm reading it, how I'm receiving it. A lot of times it's just regurgitating back and what you're getting from them. All in an effort to make sure that, hey, I understand what you want me to do, and hopefully this can help you understand how I'm interpreting that. So I think it's finding the idea or the concepts or approach that you want to take, and then that usually then informs whether I need to start with images or whether I need to start writing or whether I need to start with design or what. But yes, it's first understanding what the project is, understanding what your idea is, so that then I can explain it to other people.
In your opinion, is there a perfect deck, or do you have a deck in mind that you're very proud of, and what was it that it achieved, and what was it that made it good?
I'll say that, I guess, I don't think there is a perfect deck, because you could build a perfect deck and then somebody does not receive it that way or whatever, So So maybe the best deck is the deck that gets the work or gets the funding, you know? And that can take many shapes and forms. But in my, I guess in a more idealistic way to look at it would be, a perfect deck would be something that fully expresses, like John was saying, how you're seeing this project, so that your collaborators, your clients, anybody who's involved can see the film that's in your head very clearly, so that then you edit it and it's not a surprise, right? So it clearly communicates what's in your head.
I made a deck one time that was a back page on a website, where if you visited the website, music would begin auto-playing, which is, I think, people's least favorite thing to happen on a website, you know? So I didn't win that pitch, but I kind of don't care, because it was great. It was just a bunch of like wonderful 1970s Tokyo jazz that would begin playing as soon as you started scrolling, and you know, we should have won that one, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a perfect deck, but they're definitely bad decks. I think I've seen some really pretty bad decks if it's just got so much copy in it that it's gonna take a long time to read, or the font's really cool but really hard to read, and then you just know most people are not gonna read it, right? And I mean, we're not always all talking about the same thing between the three of us here in terms of, right, the type of like decks that we're pitching or something. If it's, but literally just trying to bring on an EP or trying to bring on funding, it just needs to be super clear and almost bullet point type thing. And then I've seen some decks that don't have an ask. Like I'm like scrolling through and the last page doesn't even have, well, what are you looking for? How much is EP level, or how much is, coming on as a sponsor or coming on as, so I think you gotta be really clear with what your ask is, what's the whole purpose of this deck.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point with the differences in your vocations, basically, your sections of the industry. I've been fascinated by how many documentaries I've been a part of, and the deck or the treatment, if they even can call it that, is literally just one page of bullet points, and how those projects have gotten funding. And coming from like some commercial production, like some of the decks that I've seen you produce, Bernardo, are 45 pages of images, The differences between these, I don't know if it's possible, Robin, maybe you can explain like why these are so different in these different parts of the industry.
Yeah, because to me, a treatment is completely different than a pitch deck. So a treatment can be 100 pages, right? I don't know, it can be really long, but the treatment's really like, in a documentary, completely different than scripted, right? But in an unscripted film, I think the treatment would be, who ideally do I get to be in the film, and here's ideally what they say, and here's how the story unfolds. And then none of that might happen, but that's at least in your mind what you want to have. Where just a pitch deck is, I need to raise money, here's my idea, here's sort of the color theme, here's the synopsis, here's my crew that I'm going to bring on, hyperlink, to their LinkedIn or IMDb or something so that people know who they are. And then, here are the people I have on board already, EPs or actors or other, or the people that they're subjects in a documentary. And then here are the levels, like, $75,000, $125,000, whatever it is, for the EP level. Maybe you can bring on sponsors at different levels too. And then I always put, this is payable to a 501c3, so that people know it can be a nonprofit donation. And then, of course, you can, say where you expect, what is the distribution? I think that's really important. People want to know, where can this be seen if I do donate to it, or if I do come on as a funder. So, you can say, based on past experiences, we anticipate this to have a wide distribution on streamers such as, Netflix, blah, 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 that kind of thing. But that's just like the pages that I think that are essential.
That's great. And Bernardo, what you were speaking to was that someone, a lot of these materials that you develop are based on someone reaching out to you, and they already have some creative, right? And so you have to respond to it. So really, you're bridging these gaps of like what they have in mind versus what you can bring to the table. Is that correct? Can you explain a little bit about how that works, and or maybe I've got it wrong?
No, I think that's a good way of putting it. It definitely is. I think it is. It feels to me like a handshake between client and whoever's producing it. It's like you are receiving the information. Got it. I know what we're all in it for, right? But it's also in my case in the commercial space, it is definitely very different from what Robin was saying. Because we do present that, but that's kind of like a separate, so like the financials, all the budgets and the tiers and stuff, it typically goes separately from the, I guess, the more creative deck or the treatment. But usually if you're creating and putting this much work into it, you're one of three directors that's being considered for the project. So this is an opportunity to not only reflect back to the client or the agency what the idea is and what they're presenting, but to inject it with your approach, your take on it, and what makes you plus the project special versus the other two, whatever. That way they can take these three approaches and then calculate what's best for them.
And John, you mentioned something earlier that, and I know you understand both of these explanations of the differences between these materials, but you developed, you had a shoot, you had a creative project, and your crew wasn't exactly aware of what was happening. Can you talk a little bit about how these materials that you develop can actually help you as a creator understand what you're about to make? I mean, that's how I don't know if you relate with that, or if you've got it kind of like cataloged in your brain. Maybe it works differently than mine, but.
No, I 100% relate to that. I think it's probably different on a scripted project where, I might have been writing the script for a year, so then my head is kind of in it, but not necessarily on a visual level. And so it's so helpful to try to bring together imagery, especially just see how scenes are going to fit together, see how colors are going to fit together. The project that you're talking about was a comedy, and if you read the script, it did not look like a comedy at all. And so no one thought it was supposed to be funny until we started shooting scenes. People were like, why are people giving these just wild performances that seem to have nothing to do with the material? And so I was like, okay, that could have been corrected, that could have been anticipated. But I think like in doc worlds, the treatment's even more helpful in that respect, where like, I might have spoken to maybe some of the subjects, if I'm just coming in as a director, maybe I've literally only spoken to the producer and maybe been on like a pre-interview call or something. So my head's not in it until I start like writing on it. So yeah, that's super helpful.
Do y'all mind sharing any entertaining stories that you've had from, I mean, we were talking about materials up until this point, but of course a lot of these materials result in some kind of in-person pitch. I don't know, have y'all done in-person pitches quite a bit? Okay, so do you have any stories that you can share of a pitch that went great or a pitch that went sideways and now in hindsight you understand why? Anything that comes to mind? Maybe I'm just asking for personal experience.
Definitely lately it's been more virtual, right? So it's a lot of Zoom pitches, presenting to, at least for me, presenting to agencies or clients remotely. And so that's definitely changed how you pitch and what you need to prepare for. And
In what way?
And just that you can't rely, it's very hard to rely on, like here I can rely on people's faces and I can see if I make a joke, I can see if it's landing or not, or I'm getting excited, they can respond back to me. Obviously you can see people on Zoom, but it just doesn't feel like a two-way street, really. So I think that part is very unique now. And so I think I think the worst case scenarios are, you know, you're presenting to like 30 people, and, you know, very passionately delivering for, you know, 45 minutes or whatever, and are receiving no feedback, so you're like, you know, trying to pause for comedic effect or pause for dramatic effect, and it is, you kind of have to like just trust your flow, I guess, and not rely on any other input, I guess. So there's definitely been a lot of that. Like, you're basically pitching to like an empty, quiet room, which is difficult.
I'll second that. The first pitch that I ever gave, this just came back to me from deep in the closet where I buried it. I think I was 22 years old, and I had just been hired by a production company. This was my first ever directing job in Oklahoma City. This was a very small production company. We worked with like local and regional clients. You know, nobody that we were pitching to was like expecting to get like a proper like pitch, nor should they have gotten that. And I didn't know that. I thought, oh, I'm supposed to pitch these people. It was Oklahoma Gas and Electric. It was the power company. And we had a Zoom call, and I was just terrified of these people. You know, I thought, you know, these people expect passion. They want drama. You know, they want to be in tears by the end of this thing. And you know, we were trying to like, you know, push Oklahomans into driving EVs at the time. And I had prepared like literally like a 30-minute speech or something that I delivered over Zoom, and it was just the worst. It was just crickets after every line. And by the end of it, I just realized very quickly, like, no one is paying attention to me. They're all doing something else on their phone. No one anticipated this meeting is going to be like this. So yeah, that was fun. Hopefully that's relatable to somebody.
I was just thinking that I think confidence has so much to do with it, even if you're like faking it. But I once had no business doing this, but I got roped into with some people I really believed in. They wanted, this was a big mistake on their part, but they wanted me to go with them to pitch a project to Disney. And somehow we got in the door. Like, we had 2, you know, Zoom calls and stuff, and then we got in the door at Disney. And we're in the middle of it, and they kind of look at me like, okay, Robin, tell them about this thing. And I don't know what I'm doing in the narrative world, like nothing. I don't know anything. And so I'm talking about it. It turns out that like the script that they sent Disney was different than the last that I'd been told or shared with, you know. So anyway, I just looked at this woman, and halfway through, I just knew this is never gonna fly. They are not gonna take this. This is like, what am I doing here? And anyway, so that was my worst experience. And sure enough, we did not get anything. And then another time, you know, a lot of my pitches are sort of informal, so people that have known me or known a past project of mine, but it's their belief in you and it's your passion. So showing that, like, I know, and again, this is my project, I'm raising the money so that I can make a film that I believe in. Unlike, it's not like I'm pitching myself as director for a commissioned project, right? Big difference. So I knew this one guy had a lot of money, and he's like, all right, well, let's go, you know, have a drink, and we'll talk about it. And I was like, I really don't want to go have a drink with this guy, but okay, I'll go have a drink. And so we're sitting at the bar. I mean, you know, it's safe or whatever. I can, you know, I'm old, so. But we were talking, and finally I realized, and this is probably about a tequila and a half in, that I just got to ask the guy for money. So he's like, all right, well, you know what, like, what do you want? And I thought, well, I could start at like 10 grand. I could go to like 15, and finally I just probably liquid courage. So I looked at him and I said, I need $50,000, and it's a tax-deductible donation. He goes, fine. He goes, no, just fine. I'll give it to you tomorrow, stop bugging me. And I was like, damn it, I should have asked for 100. But so, you know, you never know, but I'm sure it's like confidence. I'm sure it's they're trusting that money is going to go to a good cause. And I think that's the other important thing. Like, I also, you probably have felt this way too, like the minute you get your first check to make a project, luckily I've never had to abandon a project, I've never had to give money back, but I am like committed to them. And I don't care if it's like $1,000, I'm like, okay, I gotta really do this now, I gotta see this to the finish.
What are some of the pitfalls of all this work? Like, and maybe to start with that, what have you learned over the course of your careers that you see now, like the mistakes that you made and you've learned from today?
I think this is a recent thing for me. I used to be very, very afraid to personalize a pitch. I thought clients really wanted to sort of hear their own words reiterated to them, and they do. Like, they want to know that you understand the project. And I suppose this is client dependent, but for a lot of clients, they want you to bring a unique take to it, and they want to know how your previous work entangles with what they want to do. So if, like, I used to be very gun shy about putting my own work as a reference in a treatment or something. I thought that was sort of, whatever, passe or something. But now I'm like, no, I want to try to draw some kind of a line between what I've done in the past, like what you need me to do. I don't want to leave you hanging as to like, okay, is this guy doing something he's never done before? Is this guy like trying to, pretend he's able to do something he's not experienced? So I think I'm trying to be a little bit more personal now than I used to be, so, yeah.
And I could vouch for John on that too. So if you look, we've worked on a couple of pitches together, and I think one of the best experiences to come out of that was you're mentioning kind of like including your own work and your own perspective. I think it was really interesting once we started working together to include your own voice in the writing, and so I think that's something that John really pushed. You were helping me like edit the copy and stuff like that. So yes, agreed. I think your question was, what have you seen change or learned?
Yeah, kind of like what you've learned and what, in hindsight, do you see as the pitfalls?
Oh, yeah. It has been interesting. I think the other day I was reorganizing my Google Drive and moving folders around, and I was stumbling upon some of the first decks that we wrote, that I wrote, and it was really interesting to read those, even just flip through the images, and then know what the video looked like. And at first, it doesn't look at all like what the pitch looks like, like it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't, design-wise, it doesn't feel like it. The images aren't there, and so I think that's one thing that's been cool to see is that I think the more you do it, the closer you are to being able to get like what I'm writing on paper and what I'm actually like committing to is what I'm presenting is the final result. But I think so that's been really cool to see that growth. But I think the main thing I've learned is that you can't. I think writing for pitches and treatments require you to do the homework and to like really understand what you're talking about, because it's really hard to fake it and to kind of just like BS your way through a treatment if you don't have a clear vision, or if you don't have like a commitment to an approach or whatever it is. If you don't know what it is, it's gonna show up on paper. And so I think that's one big thing I've learned is to not start until I understand what I'm doing and what I want out of it.
Robin, you have any?
Well, no, I was just to offer, from what Bernardo was saying, on the documentary side of things, you might have a vision of what you think the film's going to be about, and then if you're following anybody in real time, like I did with my film Thaw, that's at 5:10, you gotta come, please, today. Things change, like you don't know, you have one vision of what might happen, and that's kind of what's exciting about a documentary, right? That things happen in real time. And so I would say just keeping it updated. And then if anybody has come on board, keeping them updated on, hey, we have some really exciting advancements or changes, or, and keeping it positive.
Yeah, that was a question that I had for all of y'all, but Robin and John, I know you both do documentary work. How much of kind of establishing an idea at the beginning, do you think that there's a degree at which you could overdo it and you kind of like are beholden to this that you've created and you've imagined, or do you rather try to keep it very open and maybe at the sacrifice of what your materials look like. Do you know the balance that I'm trying to describe there?
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, why are you making the film? I think that's what you have to understand. You have to ask yourself, is there an audience? Who's the audience for this film? And why am I making it? And then I think you just plant yourself into that. Now, if you say I'm making this film about the rising trend of egg freezing because this is has huge repercussions in our world if we have a declining birth rate, and this is something that men and women should care about because we're trying to extend fertility, and people are saying that this is a guarantee and it's not, so you have to really know what you're making the film about. Then if you find out, oh, actually, it's not what I thought that was going to be, this is because our science has changed and suddenly it's not growing as much as I thought it was over the 3 year or whatever. I mean, I think you have to be honest with yourself and say, well, okay, that's not it. But did you discover something else that's really fascinating about that subject, right? But that's the first thing any funder that's going to come on board is going to say, like, why is this an important film? Why does this need to be told? So I think you have to be true to that.
Do you feel like after that point, if you've got like a high net worth person involved who's very interested in what the film is about fundamentally, like they're down for the adventure of seeing where it goes?
Yeah, I've never had anybody come back to me saying, gosh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. I mean, most of the time people are like, oh my God, like I thought this was kind of a boring subject, but I love the film. That like the one I made about women and money. They were like, what? So I think that luckily, no. I haven't had any disgruntled EPs.
Yeah,
I will say, sorry to jump in. On the EP side, we've worked with directors where that has come up, and we get an edit, and it's completely different from what we were sold. And that does, I mean, obviously it facilitates like the critique and the comments, the feedback that you can give. But I think that's a big example of like why you should update those treatments. Because if you start off by saying this is going to be brunchy documentary and then it ends up very polished commercial, then there's some disconnect there.
Yeah.
So I think keeping people, again, very different from a documentary that evolves, but in a narrative project or a commercial project, keeping people in the loop of what that evolution is and updating that treatment is super helpful. It avoids a lot of unnecessary, drama.
That's great advice. I'm listening. John, you were going to say something?
Oh, I'm just thinking about a documentary project I'm working on right now. And this one's just on my mind because I'm very passionate about it at this moment, but it's about father and his son. The father has a genetic condition that he may or may not have passed on to his son. His son has chosen not to get tested for that condition for now, but will have to in a few years. And so we're following this family with a giant question mark hanging over everybody's head. And I was kind of nervous pitching this because I'm like, I truly don't know what's going to come of this. I know some things that are going to happen, and 90% of it I can't predict. And I've been really pleasantly surprised so far because this is like one of the first times I've been having conversations similar to what you've been having. And people have been like, that's awesome. Like, that's exciting, that's interesting. There's clearly like an emotional story to be told here. Like, we're down for, rolling the dice to see where things go. Which is kind of a strange way of looking at it, but yeah.
Well, yeah, because obviously if you're making that film, I mean, this is horrible, but there's a certain intrigue to him if he finds out that yes, the son does have it, right? But the film doesn't necessarily need to be over if he doesn't have it.
Exactly.
You just need to maybe shift the fact that the weight is more on living with that and not knowing.
Yeah, and I tried to express that. I think people got it immediately. Like, yep, you could make a film either way. It's just going to be a different film. So yeah, I guess like I'm sort of banking on smart EPs. So thanks for being one.
But think about that just on the subject free solo, right? What was his name, the climber?
Alex Honnold.
What if Alex had fallen to his death? Like, what would the filmmaker have done, Jimmy Chin, at that point? Would he have been like, how do I put this out there? How do I make this film out there? I mean, it would have made a horribly dramatic ending, but horrible, right? But so much of the tension of that came from the fact that he almost didn't make it, he almost didn't even serve it, and then he did. And the risk that the filmmaker, and that's why I think, when they broke that wall, right? When you finally see the camera turns on to Jimmy himself as he's got a camera going, oh, holy shit. Like, the fact that he, as the documentarian, was taking that risk. But the film could have turned out to be completely different had he not summoned it.
Yeah, I guess a lot of what y'all are saying is there's a tension in what's going to happen, and that's baked into all of these materials, treatment, pitch, whatever it is. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to y'all to ask questions. We got about 20 minutes, and yeah, Malik.
Hey everybody, I don't know if you hear me, but I had a question about pitching from a nonprofit organization, as a nonprofit organization versus a for-profit production company. Like, what are the logistics around that? And are funders looking for, any return if it's, not for a profit, or what does that look like when pitching?
Did everybody hear the question, by the way? Okay, great. Yeah.
So I love having a nonprofit or a fiscal sponsor is what some people can get if they don't have their own nonprofit, because nobody expects a return. And I think that as a documentarian, early on, I could have tried to, convince somebody that they were going to get a return on the project. But once you finish a documentary, and I might have made some money from screening it, or made a little bit of money from speaking or something like that. But the truth is, you sleep a lot better at night because you don't owe people money. But then, you're like 3, 4, 5, 6 films in, and there's no way I can convince anybody that the film's gonna make money. It might be the first one that gets bought by Netflix, but it's doubtful these days. So if you have a nonprofit, you're basically going to people that either grants or people that have, high net worth individuals that have family foundations, or they just want to give you a couple $1,000s or maybe $50,000, and they do it as a tax write-off. So what do they get for it? They get their name in the credits. You give them EP credit. You can have different levels. But in this day and world, in this day and age, with the funding being pulled out from underneath a lot of independent filmmakers, I think it's a really, really valuable way to raise money. I think it's one of the only ways to raise money, because grants are, how many of us are applying for grants all the time, and there's very little money to distribute there. So, and that's shrinking. So you do not need to, give money back at all to anybody that gives to your nonprofit. It's just a donation.
Great question. Yes?
This is more for like longer form projects, but do you think there's any value in creating some form of like short film or content for the pitch? Like, does that help, or has that helped you guys, or is that something that is kind of like a waste of time, depending on what you're doing?
So, did everybody hear that?
I think I'll just repeat the question real quick for whoever, if there are any tuning in on the streaming. So your question was creating a short film or a sizzle to present like what you're after as a part of your materials.
So I just did that with the project that I was talking about before, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go. So we literally just finished the short film version of this project about this father and his son, telling kind of the first maybe act of the story, and it's been very helpful. Like, that's opened all the doors. I would imagine it's very helpful to you to have done 6 films at this point. I don't have that behind me. The production company I'm working with doesn't have 6 stock features behind them either. So this has been like the way that we're getting kind of a foot in the door. So
Yeah, I would say 100% yes. I haven't made short films. I mean, I made one short film, but that was always all it was going to be. But I've made sizzles for every single long doc that I've featured doc that I've made, and I think you don't need to, because that itself costs money, right? But like the first 25,000, 30,000, whatever that I can raise, or I'll just front that myself and do a sizzle to get the best get your subject, get, you know, at least one or two subjects, the best experts that you can find, that if it's a doc, and definitely make a sizzle, because they want to see. I mean, that's the best selling tool there is.
Yeah, I concur, by the way. I know I'm a moderator, but my last film, we cut a 12-minute sizzle out of some stuff that we shot, and it led to all of our financing. So, yes. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
How would you approach pitching to finish a project versus starting? Like if you just want like the post-production or like the last few steps, how would you approach that differently, or if you would?
All right, the question was, how would you approach pitching, finishing a film versus starting, and if that's different, and if you would?
That's a great question. I think coming with a very clear ask is very important. So knowing exactly what you need to finish. Ideally, it's kind of knowing how much money you need, or how much time you need. You need color, you need graphics, you need whatever it is. I think the more precise you can be about the ask, the easier it is. It's very hard to commit to something that's like, well, we just need to finish it. But I think the more, like I said, the more precise you can be, the better.
I suppose the upside and downside to that is you can show the film in whatever state it's in, but I think you also kind of have to show the film, at least to some extent. So it's, you know, even if you haven't hired an editor yet, and that's what you're trying to raise money for, you know, I assume it would probably be nearly impossible to get finishing money without like cutting something, so you could, you know, just say, hey, we have a thing of quality here, you know, let's get to the finish line.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I would actually never show the film before it's done, unless it were like for big money. But I do think that I concur that finishing funds are the easiest to raise, because you come that far. And so you can even say, you know, I have raised $850,000, I'm $50,000 short, here's exactly what your money's gonna go toward, you know, online finishing, whatever, you know, color correction, something like that. So I think it's really great. Just show them the sizzle, or update the sizzle maybe, although that costs money too, right? But if you can let somebody know you're almost there, at least private funders, that's great, because that's a go for them. They're like, whoa, this is really happening, this is really, I've even gone back to people saying, I promise I won't ask you again for money, but I'm gonna ask you right now. Like, you know, can you, for instance, EP level for this last film started at 100, I brought it down to 75, so 75,000, somebody came at 50. I went back to her and said, hey, normally it would be 25,000 more to get to EP level, but I'm so close, I'll give it to you for 20,000 if there's any chance, and she came in. So, you know, I mean, this is kind of what's fun about running your own project. You can make the rules up yourself, but if you're that close and you know exactly what you need the money for, you just underwrite. You know, tell them they're underwriting. Can you underwrite color correction, or can you underwrite? So.
If you want to connect it to our pitching treatment, if you show them the treatment and what you've captured already,
Yeah.
and it matches, then you're on the right track.
That's, I love that. One thing I'm going to add to that too is that the people that come in at the end, and I know a few of them, they are so precious, and they have literally saved the day. So if you can relay that to them, that they were very, very important, and they deserve everything in the world, then that might help too. Yeah, another question back here?
Everything on your pitch, use crowdfunding as a way of trying to push the extra funds that you need to accomplish what you're trying to do, as well as grab media.
Say the question one more time for me.
Have anyone up on the stage, have they tried the pitch, basically what you're doing is your pitch, but you're using crowdfunding to use that in the process?
Okay, so the question is about crowdfunding and using it as part of the process in pitching.
I have early on some of my early projects, but I didn't do it to finish. I actually did it to start a project. To be honest with you, I'd rather have a drink with somebody at a bar than roll t-shirts and send, you know what I mean? I mean, it was so much work. It was so much work. And if you're hiring people that can do that for you, but you have to do updates. They were like, Robin, we gotta do another video, you pitching your project. And I mean, it was exhausting, and I think we ended up with maybe $52,000. Now that's a lot of money, that's great, but it took months of hard work, maybe 6 weeks, what they limit your time. So the last 3 projects I've done, I haven't, it's just exhausting to me. I just find them to be, like I'd rather just go after people, even corporations, for money than, but I don't wanna discourage it, I'm just saying if you have the energy and the time, because it takes a lot of work to do those campaigns, but it can work, yeah.
I've never crowdfunded. I've seen friends crowdfund, and watching that from a distance, I looked at that and I was like, that is a lot of work for not a lot of return relative to what you could potentially get by doing exactly what you're describing. So I've seen people who are brilliant at that and knock it out of the park, and I don't know how you get there.
I think if you're famous, right, then who was it that did that narrative project and he got a lot of, he went to Sundance and he got a lot of slack for it because he fundraised on, couldn't find a big studio to pick up his project, and so, I can't remember the name of it, and so he did a campaign, $5 million on Indiegogo or something. And I'm like, okay, well that's because he's famous and he pulled together all his friends, and it's sort of like not the right use of the platform, but it worked for him.
Yeah, I just real quick on the crowdfunding thing. I was a part of a film that was crowdfunded, and it was great. We got a lot of money, and we kind of built in an audience. So there was like that part to it. One kind of unfortunate part, and just a note, is like your perks on your crowdfunding, like don't make them credits, because I was a co-producer on this film along with like 55 other people, but I was on every day of the 80-day shoot, and these 55 other people gave $150, so just a note. All right, any other questions? Yes.
What's your guys' go-to tools for producing the decks, supporting assets, gifts, all that stuff?
Okay. Yeah. What are the go-to tools for producing the decks? I'm so glad you asked this.
I only get my frames for treatments from FrameSet. But for real, FrameSet actually has been a really incredible tool. It's essentially a collection of stills from focusing mostly on commercial music video and some like narrative films. But it's giving you access to commercials and stuff that are kind of hard to get to. And so I actually do really use FrameSet a lot, constantly. But finding a set of those apps where you can kind of like pull from, building your own library of assets as you're on whatever site, you see some pictures or anything. I also like recording or like saving other people's treatments that I like. That's always like a really, really good form of inspiration. And then I build my treatments mostly in design. So I think the way that I got into it was working with designers that specifically do treatments, having to just do lots of revisions, not finding somebody that I click with. I think I ended up getting a treatment pack or something like that. It was good treatments. And that I think was formatted in design. And so it was a template, but then you kind of had to learn the basics of InDesign to work it. And that was a great excuse to kind of just like get into it, learn it, and then now it's been super helpful to use it to build.
I think treatments for me fall into 2 categories. If I'm making the thing myself, I like to try to make like a back page on a website, because I feel like I have a little bit more control and I can create kind of a living document. And you could probably do that with like Dropbox paper, but I think you can make something more interesting on like, I use Cargo, but Squarespace is great too. If it's not that, if it's for like a commercial project, typically there's a couple designers in town that like I know are great. I know like usually like treatment design is like just something they like pad their month with. So I can just like hand them a treatment, they can knock it out in like an evening. So that's usually my go-to.
And if I'm doing really low budget, I've done all mine on like Google Slides. Just
Yeah, and to fill you all in about this frame set joke that Bernardo keeps making, Caleb Farmer was supposed to be here, and he started frame set, which is an incredible tool. It really is. It's world class, and he happens to live in Charlotte. So yeah, just a little context there. We probably have time for a few more. Oh yeah, sorry. I haven't been able to see you because of the cameras. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you guys for being here. I wanted to circle back to crowdfunding. I had a lot of success crowdfunding for my short film, but now I would love to produce my feature film somehow, but I have no idea where to begin, if I should independently produce or do crowdfunding again, which I don't want to do because, like you said, it's a lot of work. But where on earth would you begin with pitching to bigger production companies, or I don't know, would you go to distributors first, or would you go make connections face to face? What advice would you give?
what's your budget?
I'm not sure yet, but I know I would want like a stunt coordinator. I want a mental health professional on set with us. I want catering. I want base camp. I want to hopefully be a full SAG production. My actors would be SAG. I don't know yet. I haven't done an itemized budget yet, but I know I want it to be a bigger budget because I want my crew and cast to be taken care of financially.
Where are you at in kind of the life of your short film? Have you submitted that to like, has it done its like festival thing and all that good stuff?
We're in this.
Heck yeah, cool.
Colorado, 3 for time.
That might be like #1 place to start, would be just like, trying to meet folks at festivals. That's been like the primary way for me to like try to, find like EPs who are interested in investing in projects. But yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would also just say you have to be very patient with it for sure. Yeah, the development of these feature films takes a very, very long time. I think we can all attest to it taking a while, especially now, unfortunately. So, but yeah, excited to see your film.
Thanks. I'm in it for the long haul.
See.
I'm not in a rush.
All right, maybe one other question over here.
Yeah, so I was just curious about at what point in the pitching process does the music come in? And if so, where do you source it? And if there's already conversations about clearance and licensing for it?
Yeah, the question was related to when does music come into the pitching process and licensing the music.
I would say if you have a composer that you know you want to use, I would just put that in the deck, right? So they'll let them know. But then if you have a sizzle, usually for a sizzle we will just use, if I know the composer I want to use, I'll just ask to borrow from his library or her library. Or you go to any one of the music libraries that are on, because again, it depends on how much money you want to spend. But there's so much free music out there too. You just want it to sound like what you're hoping it sounds like in the end. Because you wouldn't want to throw somebody off. You got to think about that too. The more you show somebody, the more you open up the opportunity or the chances that they might not like it, right? So you don't want to turn somebody away from your project because they couldn't stand the violin in your sizzle or something like that. I mean, it's a balancing act. So I always think it's sort of somewhat neutral, or else, anyway. But but I don't know if that's answering your question.
I don't know if I would recommend this approach to anybody else, but I'm fairly ruthless with music. I'll just rip and rob and steal and pirate and whatever. I literally have there's a cable that sits in a drawer next to my desk, and I just plug into my I plug it in 2 places, and I can just record a song off Spotify, and would never do that for a project that's finished. But if it's just a sizzle, I have no compunction about that. So this is my confession.
I think from my perspective, I think typically music is part of it from the very beginning. So that's usually a section in that treatment or that pitch deck. It's not always this is the track, but it might be here's a playlist of things that remind me of this, or this is kind of what I want to feel. And hopefully you're getting people with imagination on the other side that can add those and kind of combine those ideas. Yeah, to piggyback off of Robin, I think finding composers that you like, reaching out to them personally goes a long way. Or if you have friends that make music, it's kind of just getting them to make it, you know. And I think that's been a really cool thing with my relationships with composers and friends, is getting to grow together, you know. So the more experience you get together, the more, you know, even if it's the first time nobody has money, you're helping me with this music, that might get him a job, and then our work together will get me a job, and I can hire him again, you know. So it's making sure that you're, you know, reciprocating that, you know, those favors, and keeping those people in your life as you progress. But yeah, I think it never hurts to just ask a composer if you can just borrow their music, or, you know.
Okay, so we're gonna have to wrap it up, but I wanna give y'all a chance to just share your whatever handles people can follow you at. Robin, I apologize at the beginning, I should have said that your film is playing in like 7 minutes.
Yeah, I gotta go.
But yeah, just real quick, we can start with you, Robin. Where can people find you?
Oh, my website's finishlinefeaturefilms.com. So you can info at, and it'll come to me.
And Thaw's playing at 510, seriously, so if you want to see a movie, you should go over and watch that. John?
JohnBurton.me, John with an H.
And then for me personally, you can find me at DA Marentes, MARENTES.com, or on our company site, wearecaravan.tv.
All right, let's give it give these folks a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you, Robin. And we'll have more of these happening the whole festival. So tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we'll be talking with editors. So that one should be fun. So come back, please. All right. See ya.